Alright guys, today's goal. The learner will understand what inverse variation is and how to define it. Alright, so the variables x and y show inverse variation if y equals a divided by x and a cannot equal 0. X cannot equal 0 also because you can never divide by 0, but that's just a standard process you need to know. The non-zero number a is a constant of variation. A constant, meaning no variable. And y varies inversely with x. Now, earlier in the year, we went over direct variation here. We went over these. They look like a line. They're y equals mx, not just y equals mx plus b, but no b is allowed in there, remember? Well, so when a is positive, here is the standard form of inverse. When a is negative, there's this that's what the reflection is, because it flips over the x-axis. Okay? So there's just a visual representation of a standard graph. So let's look at the next question here. It says, tell whether the equation represents direct variation, inverse variation, or neither. Well, I look at number 1, a would be 2, and the x is in the denominator, so this would be inverse. Okay. Now look at number 2. It doesn't say y equals yet, so how do I solve that equation for y? Not divide by y. Divide by 4. So I would get y equals 3x over 4. Now where is the x located? Numerator or denominator? Well, it's in the numerator, so it can't be inverse. Direct. Yeah, a is 3/4. Okay? So this would be direct. So think about this. So one was just set up for us. The other ones I had to solve for y. Hit pause. Try to get the other two. Okay. Now this one I see right away. I have addition. Watch. I go in 5x, negative y equals negative 5x plus 3. That bad. So it's neither. Now this one could be tough. I'm going to write it over here so I can have a little more room to show some work for you guys. Alright, we've talked about this before. I have to divide by x, but there's a fraction over there. Well, how do we divide by fractions? You multiply by the reciprocal. So what's the reciprocal of x? Well, 1 over x. So those cancel out. You get the y. And this would be 1 over 2x. There's no plus or minus. X is in the bottom, so this would be indirect. Okay. I hope this is making sense, the difference between direct variation and inverse variation. It's just where is the x located? Numerator or denominator? If you have plus or minus a constant, it is neither. Okay. So let's take a look at the next step. Alright, graphing. Okay, so identify a first. So I'm just going to start with the first one here, y equals 3x. Identify a first, okay? Well, I know for the first one, a is 3. So when I go to make my table, I'm going to go, what can I divide? I want positive and negative values that I can divide 3 by. So I'm going to go negative 3, negative 1. We'll talk about 0, and then 1 and 3. Okay? So plug it in. Y equals 3 divided by negative 3, negative 1. Plug in the negative 1, you get negative 3. Plug in 0, you get undefined. okay? And then plug in 1, you get 3. Plug in 3, you get 1. So let's plot these points now. So you go negative 3, 1, 2, 3, negative 1. And then negative 1, negative 3. Notice how I didn't cross the x or y axis on that, okay? And then you go 1, 3, 3, 1. Same thing. Okay. Right here, there's actually a vertical and a horizontal asymptote that are never going to cross each other. Now watch what happens here when we go to do the next one. What does that negative mean when we've compared in the past? It means it's reflected over the x-axis. So this blue arch should flip up. So I'm going to guess if I did that, I would get this point and this point. And if I flip these ones down, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1. So let's see. I'm still going to use negative 3, negative 1. I'm just going to skip over the 0 this time, 1 and 3. Well, if I plug in negative 3, I'd get positive 1. If I plug in negative 1, I get positive 3. And then I get negative 3, positive 1. Well, those are those points. That is what the reflection is here, guys. But the biggest thing to remember, and if you need to, write this down, okay? When you have to graph, like if A was 4, I would pick 4, 1, negative 1, negative 4. If it was 6, you could pick the same ones here, 3, negative 1, or negative 3, negative 1, 1, 3. Just pick things that are divisible so you don't end up with a fraction, guys, okay? All right, a couple more things to do, so let's move on here. All right, it says the variable x and y vary inversely, and y equals negative 2 when x equals 12. Write an inverse variation equation that relates to x and y. Okay, so the key there is it's telling you that the variable x and y vary inversely. So that means this, y equals a divided by x. Okay. Well, which values are we given? You identified the equation. It didn't say direct, it said inverse. If it said it very directly, you'd use this. Okay, but it says varies inversely. So we're using this. It says y equals negative 2, substitute it in. It doesn't tell us a. What's it say? X is 12. How would I solve this equation? Multiply both sides by 12. So you get negative 24 equals a. So what's my equation? My equation is this. Y equals negative 24 divided by, not x. Not a, x, divided by x. There is the inverse equation. Now what does it want you to do? It says then find y when x equals negative 3. Okay? Y equals negative 24 divided by 3 equals negative 8. So we have two answers. There's the equation they wanted. There's what y equaled. Okay? So, kind of the same thing here, guys. It says tell whether the ordered pairs negative 5, 2, negative 4, 2.5, 8, 1.25, and 20, 0.5 represent inverse variation. Okay, so if that's true, inverse variation, what's the standard form of the equation again? Y equals a divided by x. Well, don't I know that this is an X and this is a Y? Plug them in. Just like we did right here. Just like I plugged in the Y and the X. Plug them in right here again. Okay, so watch. 2 equals A divided by -5. Multiply by -5. You get A equals -10. So I now have this equation. Y equals -10 divided by X. Now this is what you need to do. Substitute in the rest of the points. Because if this was inverse variation, they would all equal each other. So watch. I'm going to substitute in this point right here now. 2.5 equals -10 divided by 4. I get 2.5 equals -4. 2.5 equals 2.5. Check. So the first point checks out. Check the second one now. 1.25 equals -10 divided by 8. I get 1.25 equals -1.25. Is that true? No. So this is not inverse variation. Now, if it was, we have the equation, guys. If this was, we have the equation right there. But it's not. So it did not work. Alright, guys. Well, hopefully this makes some sense to you. And please just remember to work hard. Now, one more thing before we are done. This problem, you need to have with the notes completed and ready for me to check when you walk through the door. Thank you guys very much. Please do this. Please. Thank you.